I find that the War of the Second Coalition, which the Battle of Marengo takes place, I find that in like YouTube and like shows and movies that we've been watching regarding Napoleon is usually the least covered, which is interesting. I just noticed this. I'm almost tempted to say that like the War of the Second Coalition is probably the most underrated, at least from what I'm seeing. I don't see much coverage, so I always do welcome more videos regarding it. We watched a few weeks back, the Battle of Marengo from Kings and Generals, and what I really love about this battle is that it was a defeat at first, but then the French showed back up with a stronger, larger force and basically won. And you know, when it comes to like the second coalition, usually when it is talked about, there are usually two things talked about. One, this battle of Marengo, and two, Napoleon's iconic crossing of the Alps. Very Hannibal Barca-esque. And for those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Hannibal Barca fan. He's actually my favorite military commander, above Napoleon, Alexander, Julius Caesar. I just never get tired of hearing about Hannibal Barca. He's my favorite, and this is just a personal thing, I think the best, but that's just a completely personal thing. It's by no means a fact, but, you know, and so yeah, and you see the famous painting of Napoleon on his white steed popping this epic pose while on his horse, but in real life he crossed on a mule, which is funny because it's like, that's propaganda, but it's like Napoleon doesn't really need more propaganda, at least because his feats, even without exaggeration, are just above most people's. I don't know, but that was fun. And yeah, so I was actually doing some reading about this, and the Battle of Marengo, essentially, it was the guy in charge of it, at least in terms of the Austrian side, was General von Melas? For forgive me for the mispronunciation, but essentially, yeah, he managed to drive off the French, and I was kind of doing some little research about him, skimming some articles, and he did defeat like some future marshals, which I was kind of impressed by him. It's amazing that after all the videos we've covered, there's still so many great leaders and commanders of just this era, very underrated. And yeah, I think after Milas defeated the French, he declared it a victory, which it was, but he celebrated a bit too early because I believe he gave the command to his chief of staff, General Zach. And the thing is, yeah, while the French came back, and I think it was Napoleon was hearted by a man named, how do you pronounce this properly? Yes, it was General Louis Desaix. I wanted to pronounce that properly. Um, so yeah, Louis Desaix, I believe, was quoted with saying, essentially, when he rendezvoused with Napoleon, like, the battle is lost, but there is time to win another. And this really helped, get the French back to fighting, and, as we know, they came back and won. So, yeah, I was doing some, research, I was skimming some articles, before this video, so I'm not completely, ignorant. And yeah, overall, I'm really looking forward to seeing Epic History's telling of this event. It's always kind of like, I feel like in this channel, there are when two people post, it's always a big event, oversimplified, of course, and Epic History and his amazing Napoleon thing. And I'm wondering if he's actually going to cover the Battle of Marengo, or is he just going to cover Napoleon's iconic crossing of the Alps? Because it says the road to Marengo, so I'm almost wondering if I shouldn't have talked so much about the battle if he's not going to cover it itself. Well, there's only really one way to find out now. And, yeah, I always put the link to these videos down below. I always put the title of the creator on my, title, their names, so, hopefully you can watch the original video if you don't like me I like to pause and I like to talk a lot because I feel like if I just sat here in silence, let the video play out without adding anything, it would be a waste of time, you know? So I do like to pause and like give comments a lot. So if you don't like that, the original video is down below. Give support to the original creator. And yes, I believe without any further ado, we just ought to get right into it. So let's watch Napoleon crosses the Alps, the road to Marengo.
The year is 1800, and France has a new leader, 30-year-old First Consul Napoleon Bonaparte. 5 months have passed since the Brumaire coup cast France's directory into the dustbin of history. In its aftermath, Napoleon has skillfully outmaneuvered his co-conspirators. And in a new constitution, confirmed by a massively rigged referendum, he's been confirmed as First Consul.
Yeah, Napoleon and his rigging of like elections and votes, which is funny because like every video we've watched about Napoleon, you know, from oversimplified onward, like when voting for him to be emperor or whatnot, like they always mention, yeah, that was probably rigged, probably most likely rigged, and yeah, that's just funny to me.
Alongside new consuls Cambaceres and Lebrun. Napoleon wields enormous executive power and is eager to use it. First, he offers an amnesty to royalist rebels in the Vendée, helping to pacify the region and freeing up troops. Then he creates a new national bank to restore confidence and growth to France's dysfunctional economy. He strengthens the gendarmerie, the paramilitary police, and orders it to take ruthless action against bandits who infest the French countryside. And he transforms French government, personally appointing prefects to govern every French département.
Something that always amazes me when we watch Napoleon, don't get me wrong, the battles are spectacular, and Napoleon is mainly, you know, praised and remembered for his genius in terms of, you know, military action. But it's like, you know, ever since we started watching so many Napoleon videos, I'm also a little bit more in awe of his, like, governing. You know, he was really such a great, like, administrator, and especially in comparison to, you know, the Jacobins, right? The Directory, the Bourbon monarchy, Napoleon really was just so much better at governing. And it's like, I sit there and wonder, where did this genius come from? Like, you know, this man from very humble beginnings, you know, origins in the military, rose up and was amazing in terms of politics and, you know, governing. I'm just thinking, like, so much of his reforms with the Napoleonic Code, with law, helping the economy and so on and so forth, is just so much genius. And I really do believe Napoleon was the last of a certain type of man, in the same vein of like a Julius Caesar and, you know, so on, who could not only wield the sword, but could also, I guess, I'm trying to be poetic here, like, wield the pen. You know, like, very just gifted on so many fronts. And it's just, I'm usually at awe, you know, at his reforms, and just like, yeah, the man was just very intelligent, and, you know, and the thing that gets overlooked so much, I notice, like, when we're watching these Napoleon-related films and whatnot, is his youth. Like, he accomplished so much so young, like, you know? And he even died young, like, he died, what, in his 50s, I believe? Or, yeah, and that's pretty young. I mean, I guess by our standards, yeah, you know, dying at 50 would be considered tragically, young. But yeah, it's just so much in such like, you know, a young life. It's like, I don't know. Sometimes when I'm looking at Napoleon, I kind of like have to refrain because I kind of feel bad. At 24, he was winning glory in Italy and whatnot. At 24, here I am. I haven't had left a mark in history, so like sometimes I'm just like, oh man, I'm like, yeah, let's get back to the video now.
As well as sub-prefects, and even the mayors of larger towns. Each achievement is trumpeted by the few newspapers still allowed to print, and which are now entirely under state control. But there is no reason to doubt Napoleon's immense popularity.
I really like Napoleon's signature hand and coat pose he's always doing. I actually did a quick little Google search a while back, and I was thinking like, hey, why does Napoleon always put his hand in his coat? And I think it was like a symbol of sort of nobility. At least that's what I remember from the quick Google search. Like, it's been a while, so I'm probably there's more to it than that, but like I always like it because it's like his signature thing. So, yeah.
And that his remarkable energy has begun to drag France out of chaos and torpor. However, his reputation has been forged in war, and with France facing another military crisis, he must quickly turn the situation around, or his rule could end as suddenly as it began.
I offered peace to the Austrian emperor. He did not wish it. We now have to take it by the throat. Oh, Napoleon, he never wants peace with you. In fact, no one really wants peace with you.
France is threatened on two fronts by the armies of Austria, which has 200,000 men in the field. In Germany, France's most powerful force, General Moreau's Army of the Rhine, is poised to launch a counterattack. Moreau is a skilled commander with influential friends, who had himself turned down an invitation to lead a coup against the Directory. Napoleon, warily respectful for now, offers advice, but will leave Moreau to wage his own campaign. It is in Italy that Napoleon identifies the greatest threat and the greatest opportunity. Three years ago, Napoleon's stunning victories had left France dominating northern Italy. But in 1799, forces of the Second Coalition, led by the great Russian general Alexander Suvorov, had won a series of crushing victories over the French. He had then been ordered to Switzerland. But before he could get there, General Massena's victory at Zurich thwarted coalition plans to unite their armies and staved off disaster for France.
Yes, great job, Massena. I love learning a lot about Massena because he really holds a special place in my heart ever since we covered the Napoleon in Italy series. And I'm just at awe. Certainly one of the greats of this era. And that's saying something because like this era is so full of military genius. And I think that also helps Napoleon shine even brighter, right? Because the thing is, like, yeah, and I think Napoleon is in a league of his own. He's the best of the era, and no one else is on his level. But, like, there are so many great people, from Archduke Charles, Wellington, and, you could say so many of the marshals, like Massena. It really helps make Napoleon even greater, because, like, if you have great enemies to triumph over, like, you only look more awesome, right? It's not I don't know, it's just, I think there's just so much genius and talent in this era, and it's just amazing that as much as we've covered, we're literally watching like the 2002 Napoleon series. We watch all the epic history Napoleon videos. We're watching Kings and Generals Napoleon. Just so much Napoleon on this channel. And it's like still so much more to learn. This era is just so like rich, you know, and just so interesting. I don't get bored with it.
The unpredictable Emperor Paul, incensed by British provocations, had then withdrawn Russia from the Second Coalition.
A quick video, I think, was it from Old Britannia, or like one of the videos we watched back about Napoleon? It's like, what, the English had something to do with Tsar Paul's death? They basically orchestrated it, and that got Alexander on the that's insane that like the UK could pull something like that. But they were kind of untouchable. Like, it's like, yeah, they ruled the waves. Britain must have been like certainly the safest like place on Earth. At least you never had to worry about an invasion, right, from outside forces in that regard, which is just wow.
But nearly 100,000 Austrians remain in northern Italy, under the aggressive and able leadership of General Melas.
Yeah, that's the guy I was talking about in the, what was I calling him, Melas? Yeah. Yeah, this is the dude I was talking about, who I was doing some research on, and I'm kind of impressed by him as well. Like I said, there's just so many people.
French forces, on the other hand, are scattered, outnumbered, and desperately short of supplies. It's nothing new for France's Army of Italy. But even the arrival of the great General Massena to take charge barely lifts morale. It is a fragile position, but secretly, Napoleon is planning a grand strategic maneuver to turn the tables on the Austrians and crush Melas's army. At Dijon, he has begun to assemble a new Army of the Reserve, under the nominal command of General Berthier. Veterans and conscripts alike are scraped together from depots, provinces and garrisons, until a force of 60,000 men has been gathered. A more cautious strategist may have chosen to reinforce Massena from the west, using established supply routes to shore up the front. But driving the enemy back on his own supply depots is likely to lead to stalemate.
They are advancing again here. He brings it down onto his chest. Nice!
Instead, Napoleon plans to swing south, through the Alps mountains, and emerge behind General Melas, cutting off his supplies and his escape. It is among the most daring strategic plans in history, but it will depend on secrecy and surprise, a swift and safe passage through the mountains, and for Massena to hold the line in Italy as long as he can. But while Napoleon's army is still assembling in France, Massena comes under heavy attack. On the 6th of April, General Melas launches an offensive. While General Ott makes a diversionary attack on Genoa, his main force moves to cut the coastal road at Savorna, driving a wedge between General Suchet's forces and General Massena. The French launched desperate counterattacks to break the encirclement, and General Soult wins a brilliant local victory over Ott at Montefache. But the French are heavily outnumbered. After 2 weeks hard fighting, Massena is forced to withdraw into the city of Genoa, where he is...
And there's the British Navy. Oh my goodness. Yeah, very aggressive and just... Yeah, Milas, man, just impressive.
Besieged by land and sea. General Suchet is harried all the way back to the Var River on the French frontier.
I really like learning about Suchet, like, mainly because, you know, I think his shining moment was really, yeah, the Spanish campaign where he, you know, performed the best, in my opinion, of all of Napoleon's marshals. But, like, yeah, my only sad thing is I wish Suchet could have done more as a marshal, because, like, Spain's kind of his main thing. I'm like, I would have liked to see so much more of him, right? Just to get an even greater scope of his ability. Because I was thinking, like, how would I rank the marshals? And I want to put Suchet high, but I'm like, yeah, I guess compared to some of the more heavy hitters, he doesn't have as many feats. So it's hard to just put him so high, even though I would want to, right? I don't know. I like learning about Suchet. He's definitely someone who caught my attention during the Spanish invasion.
News of the army of Italy's defeat disturbs Napoleon. He is relying on Massena to fix Melas's attention. If Genoa falls before he arrives in Italy, he will be a sitting duck, trapped between the Austrians and the mountains. On the 6th of May, Napoleon travels to Geneva to join the Army of the Reserve and order the offensive to begin.
Yeah, it's amazing how Milas managed to corner Massena, who I've mentioned is, I think, if you could make like a top 10 list of the best of this era, Massena easily goes on that list. Obviously this is all just opinion. You know, I don't want to act like I'm speaking only facts, but, you know, I would put him in like the top 10. And yeah, just like I said, when I was doing my research and learning about Milas, I was just like, man, impressive. You know, he managed to really bring the fight here to not only Massena, but Soult, another one of Napoleon's renowned marshals, and, you know, drive back Suchet, someone who I think is also really good. So, like, that's just impressive, like, you know. An army can pass always, and at any season, wherever two men can set their feet. I would kind of agree, just not winter. Especially in Russia.
The Alps. 500 miles long, more than 100 miles wide. Their highest peaks more than 15,000 feet. They can be traversed by several well-known mountain passes. But these are narrow, winding trails, vulnerable to avalanches, with no fodder for horses and mules. It's a daunting challenge for an army of 50,000 with 40 guns and hundreds of wagons. Napoleon has decided the bulk of his forces will cross at the Great St. Bernard Pass, at an elevation of 8,100 feet. On the 15th of May, General Lannes and his advance guard begin the climb.
My favorite part about watching so much Napoleon videos is that I basically know all these names that are dropped. I'm like, oh hey, it's you, and you, and you. Like, you know, I like that, just in my head, like, oh yes, Marshal. Well, this is before they're marshals, but, you know, I really like just seeing and recognizing so many people. It makes me happy.
Even in late spring, the mountains are blanketed in deep snow. To reduce the risk of avalanche, they march at night and early morning. A strict silence is enforced. The only noise, the howling wind and crunching snow. The barrel of each cannon weighs around half a ton. General Marmont, commanding the artillery, comes up with the idea of laying them in hollowed-out tree trunks, so they can be hauled like sleds. Lannes' advance guard snakes up the 8-mile trail. It's 5 hours of grueling uphill marching, and at several points the men are close to mutiny. But they make it. At 8,100 feet, they reach the summit of the pass and the St. Bernard Hospice, where food and rest has been prepared. The rest of the army completes the crossing over the next 10 days. It is a testament to General Berthier's planning that just 5 men and a single cannon are lost.
Amazing. Yeah, that's why he was the amazing chief of staff. And you know, while I've mentioned that Davout is my favorite marshal, and you know, I've always said the best, obviously some people have taken exception to that, but obviously that's just an opinion. That's just how I feel. I think Berthier, I always had trouble saying this guy's name of all the marshals, but I think Berthier is the most important marshal. And like I say, he's not my favorite, but I think he is the most important. And his role as chief of staff, he's just indispensable. Like, things weren't the same. I think when we were watching, you know, History Marches, why Napoleon lost at Waterloo, and, you know, so much probably could have been better had Berthier been there. And, you know, I said no offense to Soult, because Soult obviously is one of Napoleon's, you know, best marshals, but like, I was like, no one can replace Berthier. I don't think any marshal could ever replace him. And, you know, logistics is kind of a thing in war that's kind of not as renowned, right? As, like, you know, the leaders and the battles themselves. But logistics, like, I've learned so much watching so many of these war videos it's just so vital. And it's like, you know, the people who are in charge of logistics are kind of the unsung heroes of war, but Berthier, man, he really is just vital, and without him, just things were never the same, you know?
Men and a single cannon are lost. Contrary to Napoleonic propaganda, the first consul made the crossing on a sure-footed mule, trailing the army, rather than leading it on a charger.
Oh, man. Like I said, I love this painting. It's iconic. Probably one of the earliest paintings I ever saw. I remember being a child, like, in the single digits, and seeing this majestic painting. Though in some versions, his awesome cape thing is red, but in some I've noticed it's gold. But yeah, like I said, the achievement is great enough, but like, you know, Napoleon, not one to fail in propaganda. And, yeah, overall, like, very Hannibal Barca-esque, except, you know, Hannibal Barca lost so many men, but, you know, different time, different era. But, yeah, it's just, like, just an amazing feat. Always amazing.
Lannes' advance guard presses forward into the Aosta Valley. They sweep aside small Austrian outposts, then surprise and scatter a whole battalion at Châtillon. But a nasty surprise awaits at Fort Bard. The fort, held by the indomitable Captain Bernkopf and 400 troops, dominates the pass with its heavy artillery. Infantry and cavalry can skirt around it by means of a goat path, but artillery and wagons will be seriously delayed until Fort Bard is taken. A first assault by French grenadiers fails, with 200 casualties. The fort remains defiant, and for Napoleon, the clock is ticking. In Italy, the French position is increasingly desperate. On the 15th of May, the garrison of Savona surrenders. In Genoa, Massena conducts a brave and active defense, though in one sortie, General Soult is badly wounded and captured. But now, starvation looms. There are already reports of cannibalism.
Oh gosh.
Napoleon.
There was a siege in... I was researching about Chinese history, which in my opinion is the most unhinged history of all time. Some of the things I read, like I was reading about like, you know, like the Taiping Rebellion, where that dude claimed to be the brother of Jesus Christ and made a war. I think that was even more deadly than World War I. Coming soon to this channel from Epic History, a reaction to World War I. But, and I was like, what the heck am I reading? There was one instance where, yeah, like a Chinese army in a city cannibalized all the civilians, like children, women, elderly, like 30,000, I think, people were cannibalized. 30 or to 60,000, I forget. And I was just like, what? Like, I was like shocked reading this. And yeah, like cannibalism is something that happens in sieges from some of the, you know, sieges I was learning about. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, it gets hard. Like, I'm like, siege warfare, I think, is somewhat the ugliest, most brutal parts of war. That and, like, you know, yeah, it's just, like, ugh. I would rather just die in a pitched battle than be stuck in a siege, because sieges suck. Like, yeah.
Napoleon cannot wait for Fort Bard to fall. The army must push on without its guns and baggage, and hope to capture supplies from the Austrians. On the 23rd of May, Lannes attacks the enemy at Ivrea, taking the town and citadel. 3 days later, he defeats General Hadig near the village of Romano. The Austrians fall back on Turin. With 30,000 French troops now pouring into Lombardy, Napoleon has done it. He has completed one of the most famous marches in history. Italy is wide open, and the Austrians are scrambling to respond.
Amazing. Caught them completely unawares. Just bold, audacious, as you expect from Napoleon Bonaparte.
Spectrum presenta un increíble paquete de TV de streaming que te ayudará a ahorrar. Con Spectrum TV.
We have struck here like lightning. The enemy can hardly believe it.
Mélas quickly grasps the significance of Napoleon's maneuver. He immediately recalls Elsnitz's corps from the French frontier and sends his forces to guard the River Po crossings. He assumes the French will march to relieve Genoa. But despite the desperate plight of Massena and his starving garrison, Napoleon turns east, towards Milan. General Vukasovic holds the city, but heavily outnumbered, he retreats towards Mantua. On the 2nd of June, Napoleon enters the capital of Lombardy. But unlike the celebrations of 1796, this time, French troops are received in cold silence. Locals have not forgotten Napoleon's brutal crackdowns of the past. Regardless, in Milan his army can finally rest and requisition much-needed supplies. 3 days later, reinforcements arrive from the Army of the Rhine, General Moncey's division, which has made its own arduous alpine crossing through the Gotthard Pass. The first consul is on the cusp of achieving his grand encirclement. Back in the mountains, Fort Bard finally surrenders. But its stubborn defense means Napoleon will be short of guns and ammunition in the days ahead. Then, on the 8th of June, disastrous news arrives. Napoleon has asked too much of Massena. For weeks, Genoa has been a scene of utter horror. Several thousand civilians have starved to death or died of disease, along with 4,000 French soldiers. General Massena, his own health broken, and furious at Napoleon's failure to relieve him, negotiates an honourable surrender, which will allow his surviving troops to return to France.
Dang, yeah. Oh my goodness. But like, understandable, you know, when you reach the point of cannibalism and like 15,000 people did, oh my goodness. Like, yeah, there comes a point where it's like, yeah, you want that awful misery to end. And like, it didn't seem like Napoleon was coming anytime soon, so yeah, there's just limits, right, to certain things, and yeah.
The fall of Genoa frees Ott and 12,000 soldiers to march north to join Melas. Napoleon is determined that the Austrians will not now slip past him and escape his trap. And so he divides his army to cover all possible routes east. For once, it is Napoleon's forces that are overextended. And it is Lannes's advance guard that will pay the price. With 7,000 men, Lannes has secured a bridgehead across the River Po, near Belgioioso. On the 8th of June, he presses forward, intending to drive the enemy from the Stradella defile. But unknown to Lannes, he is on a collision course with General Ott's division, marching north from Genoa. He is about to stumble into a battle, outnumbered 2-1.
Bones cracked in my division like glass in a hailstorm.
On the morning of the 9th of June, Lannes's advance guard fights a running battle with what it believes to be an isolated Austrian unit, driving it back towards the walled town of Casteggio. In fact, it is General Ott's advance guard. What rolling hills and tall rye fields hide from view is the rest of Ott's command, 16,000 strong, following up close behind. Around noon, the French spot Austrian infantry holding a ridge to the south. Assuming it's the enemy rearguard, Lannes orders a brigade to swing round and attack. Meanwhile, his cavalry continues to Casteggio. They scatter the enemy in their path and break into the town.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying seeing a lot more of Lands right now, because so far the man has been aggressive and he's been getting so many results, you know, and yeah, Marshal Lands regarded as one of the, you know, best marshals, and I like seeing his skill on display here, because the man is getting results and he's just, you know, just spectacular, you know, and I'm wondering how things are gonna go if he, you know, comes against his larger force, if he's gonna hold the ground, maybe even overcome it, or what. Like, I'm actually really interested.
Only to be surprised and countercharged by a much larger Austrian cavalry force. On the heights, the French make steady progress, until 4,000 Austrian reinforcements hove into view. Soon, Lannes' men are being pulverized by artillery fire. His force is hard-pressed everywhere, and still, enemy reinforcements continue to arrive. But Ott is cautious and holds back a large reserve. The broken ground leaves him unsure of enemy strength, and he has orders not to be drawn into a major battle.
I see.
At 2 p.m, Lannes receives his own reinforcements, 6,000 men of General Victor's division. Lannes wastes no time. Victor's 43rd line renews the attack on the right. The Austrian line buckles, falling back to a small stream. The rest of Victor's men race towards Casteggio. Under a hail of cannon fire, their advance stalls. But the 6th Light Infantry is able to cross the Coppa River to the north. Around the same time, French infantry take Casa il Giardiana, splitting the Austrians in two. Fearing he will be outflanked, General Schellenberg, commanding the Austrian centre, orders a slow withdrawal. Seeing this, Lannes sends the 96th line forward to storm Casteggio. With his men tired and darkness falling, Ott orders a retreat to Voghera. The Battle of Montebello, as it becomes known, was a hard-fought soldiers' battle, in which French determination triumphed in the face of Austrian numbers and artillery.
Dang, those numbers are so close.
As Napoleon inspects the battlefield, he is greeted by an old friend, General Louis Desaix, who has escaped from Egypt during a temporary armistice. Just a year older than Napoleon, Desaix is another of France's brilliant young generals, who will play a crucial role in the days ahead. He is immediately given command of 2 divisions. Montebello is a glorious victory for Lannes. Napoleon will one day reward him with the title Duke of Montebello.
Yeah, Lannes was spectacular. This video in general, Lannes really showing why he's great. Like, it's just amazing.
But the larger picture is unchanged. Napoleon still desperately seeks his decisive battle, the victory that may end the war with Austria, and will surely make his position as first consul unassailable. But Napoleon allows fear of the Austrians' escape to dominate his thinking, and once more he divides his forces, just as Melas is ordering his forces to concentrate at Alessandria for battle. Napoleon has misjudged his opponent. He is headed towards a nasty surprise. A bloody battle that will cost him dear and threaten the future of the consulate. Napoleon needed a win in Italy. His last campaign, in Egypt, had been scuppered at the Battle of the Nile by the Royal Navy and a certain Rear Admiral Horatio Nelson. We've got a great new video on this decisive naval encounter, featuring stunning original 3D graphics. And if you want to see it now, you can head over to prestige streaming service Nebula. There you can also watch our video on the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, with Trafalgar coming soon. And we're far from the only history creator on Nebula. If you enjoy our videos on lesser-known conflicts, then you'll love Neo's series Underexposure, which looks at neglected yet fascinating.
So yes, I was just wanted to see. Yeah, I regret talking about the battle Marengo. I wasn't sure he was going to cover it all in one video. I regret talking about it in the opening, but oh well. That's for next time, I suppose. And yeah, just once again another spectacular, you know, video, and I really enjoy like, learning about this. And Marshall Lands was just brilliant. Like, you know, just I really like seeing him in this video. Very much just amazing. And yeah, like I said, I really just love learning about this, and I really love, you know, Napoleon's iconic crossing, seeing so many of these future marshals in action is just, you know, just super interesting. And I'm looking forward to the actual battle of Marengo next, whenever it comes. Months from now, I suppose. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I feel like I've said all that I needed to say throughout this video, so I'll just leave it at that. Till the next time.